Welcome to the WriterDojo with your host, Steve Diamond.
That's me.
And Larry Correia.
Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you might miss it.
Today's episode, wrapping it up, round 2.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the WriterDojo. Glad to have you all with us. So yeah, thanks for your patience over the last week. My house didn't burn down, so that was cool.
Yeah, so we have a really good excuse for why we didn't have an episode last week.
Yeah. So Cliff Notes version, we have like an air filter because the air here is terrible. So we have like a little portable one in the house, and when it kicks on, it's like it like starts sounding like a jet engine. And so I was just sitting there, and all of a sudden, for no reason, just kicked on like super high gear, like hadn't burned anything or whatever. So I go to check it out, and it smells like burnt electrical and plastic. I'm like, oh crap, the motor on this thing's burning out. So we turn it off. The smell doesn't stop. And then we notice that there's an issue on the thermostat. So we go outside and first look at the air conditioner outside because it's old. And it smelled like everything was burning out there. And then we go downstairs to flip off the electrical. And I open the furnace room and smoke just roils out of it. Just billows out of it. And so I step inside to flick off the breaker for it. I get one step into my furnace room and start choking to death. So I back out and I'm like, F this. So we go upstairs, call the fire department. They show up in like 5 minutes, dude.
Pretty good.
Like
That's pretty impressive, yeah.
Ridiculously quick. We could hear the sirens in the distance and we're like, is that for us? Sure enough. And this is at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So it's dark. They block off our street. They block off the neighborhood. There's multiple engines, ambulance, cops, everyone. Because, they don't know how bad it's going to be.
When they get a fire call, they assume it's going to be bad.
Yeah. I mean, we told them, we said, look, we didn't see any flames, but that doesn't mean anything.
Well, if you prepare for the worst, you're always pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. So they go in, they go down there because we've evacuated out. So we're outside the house at this point. They go down, check stuff out, flip the breaker, come back up, and they're like, yeah, so the motor on your furnace burned out? Like, in a bad way. It melted. The motor melted. Like, what? So we had the furnace guy, kind of our HVAC guy, come and check it out. And he was looking at it, and he went to the furnace room, and he held up this piece of the motor for me, and it was just this melted glob. He's like, yeah, I've never seen a motor burn out like this or cause this much smoke. He's like, there's smoke damage all in here. And so we have to replace it. It's 10 grand to replace the whole thing. But
that hurts.
It does. Luckily I got realties this week. Yeah, we were fortunate because, it happened while we were awake, while we were at home. And so like Logan, my son's room is right next to the furnace room. And so imagine all those toxic fumes just suffocating him all night. Like that'd have been bad, dude. And
yeah.
so,
Oh yeah.
So it was good. Everyone in the neighborhood came over, while the ambulance or the fire trucks were here. Like, hey, so what'd you do? All excited.
When we were supposed to record the next day.
Yeah, and it was bad.
And it was like, oh yeah, let's just go ahead and.
Yeah, so
I was like, you'll never have a better. This is a good excuse.
Yeah, so two things with that. One, like allergies are miserable with that kind of smoke. I'm still congested from it.
Yeah, you sound it. Yeah.
So I apologize for that, everybody. But part two is in Utah. From when that happened over the weekend, it was like 90 degrees down here, 90, 92, 93. We don't have AC. We don't have a furnace. So it's just hot.
Yeah.
And so we had to have all the windows open for as much good as that would do. So allergy from the smoke, allergy from, regular allergies outside, and then heat. It was just miserable.
Yeah. Well, then I always come here because there's reasons to come here. There's no reason to go to my area unless like
Yeah, unless it's planned.
Unless you're going to my house.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, no one ever comes to where I live because, and that's why we live there.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, so that's the main reason why there was a delay.
That excitement out of the way.
Yeah, and thanks to everybody for the kind words on Facebook in our Facebook group. I appreciate it. We're totally fine. We're safe. The house is fine. There's no smell in the house anymore, except within the furnace room itself and its light. And that's not going to go away until the piece of equipment is removed, which is in a week.
Yeah.
So I have a week of suffering through this still. But anyway, but prior to that, the last several months have been really interesting for us.
Yeah, we so this episode we wanted to talk about wrapping it up, and this will be the second time we've talked about this topic.
Yeah.
And the reason being, the last time we talked about it, we were in the process.
Yeah, we were wrapping it up.
So Steve was wrapping up a trilogy.
Yeah.
And I was wrapping up a 6-book
You're wrapping
series.
up a trilogy with your 6th book.
I was wrapping up a 5-book series that turned into 6. And I pitched it as a trilogy. But no, so we're done now.
Yep. You're done. I'm done. You've turned in your edits. Yeah. It's all done.
I gotta wait. I'm waiting.
Unless, you'll probably have some edits to come back. Definitely some copy that you'll have to fix up.
There'll be copy edits and stuff, but I'm not anticipating anything big on this.
No.
But yeah, so it is wrapped up. Like, it is 6-book epic fantasy series. It is done.
So for the top half of this episode, let's talk about some of our processes as we were going through wrapping it up, the things that we had to be on the lookout for. And then the back half of the episode, we can talk about some of the other aspects of the whole deal. Now, I don't know about you. I noticed what I noticed when I was finishing up the 3rd book of the Jack Bishop series, and for you, I would assume it'd have to be even more, because 6 books, more content, et cetera, et cetera. I was so worried, and it bogged me down at times, thinking about like, oh man, did I wrap up that one little plot thread over there that actually matters? Yeah. And then evaluating, do I even care if I wrap up that thread?
Yeah, so when you're finishing a series, there's a bunch of questions you got to ask yourself, and I think that's the big one, is what matters?
Yeah.
Because if you've built a world, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on there. You obviously can't answer every single thing.
So one of the things that I learned when I was reading Steven Erikson and talking with him and stuff is that his philosophy, and one that I agree with, and I think you agree with, is the world kind of should exist with or without you there. The story, the people, the characters that you're writing, that's their story, but there's other stories going on. Things are happening within the world. It makes it feel more alive and full, I think.
I agree. I think and we talked about this on the world building episode quite a bit, for it to feel like a real fleshed out setting, it has to exist beyond just what is going with the characters immediately. That's why there's all this stuff in all these books that I write that never make it into the book, but I know in my head that exists in that universe. And as long as I write it that way, that references these things, because you have millions of people exist on your planet that you're writing about. They all have lives too.
Yeah.
And beyond what just the main character does. So unless you're writing, the Truman Show,
right?
You know what I mean? I think honestly, if you do it right, the world will feel organic and real. Mm-hmm. If you do it wrong, it feels like the world is a fake place. It's just it's a sound stage.
Yeah. It's like when you watch, okay, here's a pretty decent example. So I was watching the first season of the Wheel of Time TV show, which is atrocious.
Haven't watched it.
It's garbage.
I heard nothing but terrible, so I never watched it.
It's garbage.
Yeah.
And there's some pretty good actors and actresses in it. So I feel really bad. In fact, the chick who plays Moraine in it, Rosamund Pike, is a terrific actress. But they spend all this money on CG and stuff to make it look pretty, but it all looks so sterile. It's like when you're playing a video game or you're watching a show and the cue for the scene is just a smidge too early, and you can tell that they just started walking and they're pretending that they've been walking for a minute. You know what I mean? all that stuff, all those people, like you said, they've been doing their own thing. I think this is why, say something like The Witcher 3, why it works so well. Because
it feels like a world.
It feels like a world, and people have been making decisions and issues and problems and have been having lives. You're just there cleaning up a mess.
Right.
And that works really, really well. But sometimes a lot of that stuff doesn't matter. Yeah. And that's the balancing act. And it's hard, man.
Because so you're wrapping up the series, and if you have built an organic world, you can't answer every single question.
No.
Because there's too many questions. What happened to so-and-so? What happened to this guy? What happened to this guy? What happened to this thing? What about the war between the such and such? I mean, if that's what the plot is about, then obviously you need to answer those questions. So like I just wrapped up, Heart of the Mountain. So 6th book, Son of the Black Sword. There's
about 900,000 words between all 6 books.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm it's not like I'm writing these door stoppers. I write my epic fantasies like they're thrillers. So for me, 130,000 words is
you're more in the vein of like heroic fantasy.
Yeah, I'm not writing. I'm not writing a languid 400,000 words. I'm going to tell you what everybody had for dinner every day.
No.
Or I was talking to producer Jack earlier on the way here, and because he just read it and he loved it. And
he was telling me I was talking to him the other day, dude. He was raving about it.
Yeah, it's really good. And Jason Cordova read it too, and loved it. I made Jason cry at the end, but I don't like to tell every little thing. Like, so if the main character is going from one place to the other, that's maybe a couple paragraphs to tell you of the journey, unless something interesting happened. Yeah, he just went there, and I'm going to get to the thing that matters. I'm going to say it took a week to get there, and now here's the thing that matters.
They ate.
Yeah. Now, if there's interesting conversations to have, I'll have them. But I only put in the interesting things. So it's kind of my rule of thumb for wrapping the series up follows that same general idea. I'm only going to tell the interesting things. Now, everything should be interesting. So I should change it to this should be the pertinent things.
Right. I mean, I think there's always interesting things that we have to leave out just for either space or because we're on a freaking tight deadline. I mean, shoot, dude, when I was writing Catalyst,
you had to write like 90,000 words.
I was doing it in a month.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Right? And not all of us are Rick the Machine Partlow.
No.
Okay.
No, we're not.
And so I was writing that, and there were a couple scenes in there where I was like, oh man, if I had my druthers, if I had my time, I would probably flesh this part out. I'd probably write another 5,000 words here that's about this or this, but I don't have time. And frankly, maybe it's not even that necessary. It forced me to make really good, hard choices.
Well, one of the things I learned, and I'll talk about this after the break, because it's kind of a bigger thing, was beware introducing new things.
Oh, especially at the end.
In the last book.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah. Because if you have a thing that's like, oh, this is really cool, that might be really cool, and you might even be able to introduce it, but you don't have the space and time to expand upon it.
No, I think that's been one of the criticisms of the Harry Potter series, is that it felt like at least this is one of my criticisms of it. And don't get me wrong, I actually really like the series. But it does feel like as you're going along, you're getting to books, 6 and 7 in there. And it feels like she's like introducing things that weren't really there, like really late in the game, just to help further the plot.
Yeah.
And I get it. I totally get it. Like now having, and not even to her scale, right? And not even to your scale, but I get it. Like you get like a cool idea, or maybe you're like, man, I don't know if I have a clean way of getting out of this situation. I need to figure something out. It's hard because, look, if I'm in book 2, I'm like, I'll fix that one in the next book. I'm good. I'll fix it in post.
Yeah.
And even more with the first book. But with the last one, it's like, no. Like, this is it.
This is it.
All right. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to continue on the topic. We'll ramble. That's what we do. We'll be right back.
The Asian and Pacific Islander folklore and cultural history podcast Legends from the Pacific completed episode 150. Legends from the Pacific is an Asian and Pacific Islander version of Grimm's fairy tales, and in celebration of the big 150 milestone, I attempt to set the record straight about cannibalism in Hawaii. However, this episode goes further into sharing how Robert Louis Stevenson, who wrote Treasure Island and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and Herman Melville, author of Moby Dick, perpetuated this Pacific taboo for the worse? Hear all the delicious details for yourself by listening to Legends from the Pacific, episode 150, Cannibalism in Hawaii, The Curse of Kane, on your favorite podcast app, or visit us at legendsfromthepacific.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Okay, so there are a lot of challenges, obviously, when it comes to writing a series and finishing off a series specifically. For you, what was the single biggest challenge of it?
Well, a few things. So for me, it was a little weird. And if you remember, I talked on the show already. So I was originally going to have a 5-book series. But book 5 was getting just too dang big. And so when all said and done, if I had not broken this in half, the last book would have been 250,000 words.
250 to 300, yeah.
Yeah, it was the two together would have been really fat. So they couldn't really do that. We were talking about J.K. Rowling earlier, and we talked about how it's funny because if you look at her books, it's like skinny, fat, giant, huge.
Yeah.
I try to keep the books in my series relatively the same size. So when I decided to split it in half, so when we did the previous wrapping up episode, we talked about this a little bit. I had a really good logical stopping point for an entire arc for one book, and that was perfect. What this last book was originally was just the end. It was just the finale. Mm-hmm. So this actually gave me a little more room to play, and a little more room to really settle the score for everybody that mattered. So I went through and I was like, okay, like we talked about before the break, what's pertinent? Mm-hmm. Because can't answer every question, and Jack and Jason both told me the same things. Reading this manuscript of what people are going to be upset about is the people who need their hands held.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Because this is a story for those of you who read Son of the Black Sword. You know that this is obviously it's a fantasy, but it's got a science fiction explanation for it.
Yep.
It's kind of like Anne McCaffrey's Pern. There's a science fiction explanation for the fantasy world. Don't want to get into it too much. And I reveal a lot of it, but everything is through the perspective of the characters. So to them, it's myth, it's legend, it's magic, right?
I mean, Mark Lawrence's series does the same thing.
It's actually really common. It's a really common trope in fantasy.
And the way
Terry Brooks, Shanna is post-apocalyptic.
It is. It obviously is. And short of having a hologram pop up and tell you what's actually going on, which is the Little Maiden Butler. And Mark Lawrence does that, and because he's awesome, he does it well.
Yeah, he had the computer in the wall.
Yeah, and and he has a literal hologram pop up in his second trilogy. That's the sequel trilogy. Short of doing that, like it's your own characters, unless you have you happen to have some immortal wizard or something living on your planet. I what do you want? You know what I mean?
So one of the decisions I had to make was how much of the ancient history am I going to explain? And so I explained a lot of it, but I only explained what was pertinent to the events. Everything else, and really at the very, very, very end of this book, I skip ahead again in time for basically the epilogue, just to kind of demonstrate that to these people, this is their myth, this is their legend, these are their gods and their heroes, right? To the main characters, as the story was going on, this was their coworkers, this is their friends and family, right? And so not everything gets explained. So you have to decide what you're going to explain and then work with it. And then I was like, okay, these are all the main characters. These are all the characters that really matter. I need to have some sort of conclusion that explains kind of where they wind up. A lot of them died, so that's not really an issue.
Well, they ended up in a grave.
I mean, obviously, if it's a Larry Correia novel, you guys know, not everybody makes it. And I do make people cry in this one. But it's like, so those people, I was like, I need to make sure they have a satisfactory conclusion. I hate that awful thing that's got into fantasy where it's grim, nihilistic character death for pointless reasons,
Yeah.
for shock value. I mean, I've killed characters in shocking ways, right? And I've done the shock value thing, but there's got to be more to it than that. There's got to be a purpose.
Yeah. I mean,
Whatever. I mean, the purpose could even be showing that, character death is bad.
well, yeah,
You know?
a lot of times you can do it early to show that there are stakes and that the characters are perhaps not safe.
Yeah. Sometimes your reason might just be to provoke an emotional reaction from the reader.
Or sometimes it's not even really about the character who died. It's about those who are surviving.
Yes, actually, and that's one of the things. So in this wrap up, because I kill so many people, I have scenes afterwards with the survivors dealing with that, and some of those are actually really emotional.
Well, I mean, you and I, we've stated umpteen gajillion times how much we love Band of Brothers.
Oh, fantastic!
There's that whole episode. It's like The Replacements.
Oh gosh, yeah. Where it was guys who get put in for dudes who died.
Yeah.
And they're outsiders.
Yeah.
They haven't been through what everybody else has been through.
And they do an excellent job of showing the baggage, both literal in a couple of cases and mental and emotional, that the survivors have. And that's where like survivor's guilt really truly comes in play and stuff.
Yep.
And I think you can show that through the death of a character.
Yep. And so I did that. So some of the end of this was that, in giving people that kind of emotional catharsis at the end of the book. Another thing was you have to decide, because here's the kicker: if you've built that big organic world, you don't need to say where every character is going to go for the rest of their life, because obviously a lot of these people are going to go on and have all new adventures and all new things happen to them. But in this case, I went almost like into the Lord of the Rings, where there's that like last section of the Lord of the Rings where everybody's, going and so went here and so did this and so had 7 children. I did a little bit of that. I engaged in that. No, some people I didn't answer exactly because it was funner to leave it up to the imagination of where this particular dude's going to go.
This person disappeared.
Yeah, this guy just went off to do his thing. Other people, I very specifically, there were some characters I had to give a happy ending.
Yeah, when I was wrapping up the Jack Bishop series, there for a small series though there's actually quite a few characters by the time I'm done.
Yeah, it's pretty cast.
And I only really truly state what happens to maybe 2 of them. For 2 of the others, it's implied what happened. And then for everyone else, it's just kind of like, I don't know.
Yep.
So my dad was asking me about it the other night because he finished it. And he's like, so did so-and-so live? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe.
Yep.
I mean, in my head, I know what I think. I'm not going to say it on here, but I know what I think. But it could go either way, and I think it's fine either way.
Yeah, and sometimes when you wrap something up, that's fine, and you can leave it. I did one where I had a character who people like him or they hate him, or both, simultaneously. And I actually at the end with him and how he wound up, I subverted the expectations. That's one of the things Jack was telling me, and he's like, wow, I could have seen that going one of 2 directions with this guy, and it really could have been like a noble end or a dark end, and I don't want to say which way I went. But both of them made perfect logical sense.
Well, it's like the other day when we were talking about the end of Godzilla.
Oh yeah. The very end when he does the kamikaze run. Mm-hmm. Every episode we're going to talk about Godzilla from now on.
Yes,
because it was that good. But when he did the kamikaze run, it could have went either way. He could have sacrificed himself,
or he could have survived.
Yeah, and it actually gave you both, and then give you the real one.
Yeah, and
well done.
Either way is fine.
Either way made perfect sense.
And I think that works because I think that works when you've built a really good character in a really good living world.
Yeah, you get that chance. You could take them different logical ways, just like real people. Mm-hmm. Now, some things are going to go to their inevitable conclusion.
Sure.
there are some things, look back on the series and think, what promises have I made to the reader during this? Now, if there are certain mysteries that are mysteries and they're going to stay mysteries, that's fine. If there's other things that you've promised the reader, I'm going to reveal this is going to get revealed. This is the big, and you don't reveal it.
I'm going to provide you chapter 1 of my 3rd book. I promise.
Yeah.
Wait.
donate $500,000 to my charity,
Which is my house that I live in.
It's really?
Yeah. Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Man, me and you were way too honorable for this business. I swear. Oh my gosh.
If we were all samurai, you and I'd still be alive, and some dude would be committing seppuku right now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, sorry guys. We digress. We try not to talk too much trash about other authors.
Sometimes it
on
just,
the show.
Sometimes it
with a few exceptions.
magically appears.
Yeah, with a few exceptions. Now, so when I was writing book 6, because there was a book 6, I had an opportunity for a little more space, and I used it. By golly, I used it.
Yeah.
And I think I feel like I pulled it off really well, and I'm really excited for people to read Heart of the Mountain and let me know what they think. So, book 5, the E-Arc's out. The actual book comes out in November, very soon. And that's the book 5, and then book 6 comes out shortly after in February. So just boom.
I didn't realize it was that fast.
2 really close releases, and I'm dedicating book 6 to George R.R. Martin.
Are you still going to do it?
I am doing it,
Nice.
and it says to George, see, it ain't that hard. Because I wrote this whole 6-book series since his last one came out.
Well, and like I said earlier, it's effectively 900,000 words.
Plus I'm doing it kind of to poke him in the eye, and also on a personal level for old time's sake. But also, I invite the comparisons.
Yeah.
And plus, there's been this whole big thing, and we've talked about it on the show, where it's damaged other writers' careers. I don't want to digress too much, but yeah. So to me, that's more of a like.
Well, no, you know what I think?
It's a personal thing.
I do think that finishing a series and finishing a series well is about the only thing. It's about the only weapon the authors have in their toolkits now to help repair damage that has been done by some other authors.
Yeah, there's been too many letdowns in the market, and too many readers have been burned.
And to be clear, I am not just talking about
No, there's a bunch.
Martin and Rothfuss.
There
There are a lot of authors.
We'll talk to anybody who finished The Gunslinger.
Yeah.
Nobody was satisfied with the ending of The Gunslinger. I don't think I've ever talked to a single Stephen King fan who was satisfied by the ending of The Gunslinger.
You would have to be a super diehard.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen
the one guy that we could ask would be Durfee.
He's a big
He's a
fan.
massive fan.
Yeah, he's a big fan. But honestly, mostly what I've seen from people who are like big fans was just dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
So I think part of it too is when you're wrapping it up, it's the wrap up. This is one you can't phone in. You can't screw up. You got to actually think things through. You got to put in the effort. This is the finale.
This was my biggest, and you remember this is my biggest cause of anxiety, finishing the series.
Right.
But
your reactions have been great.
They've been great reactions
you did a good job,
so far.
Yeah.
And I think I made the right choice.
Because you went.
I went with a happier-ish ending. And you and I, we were driving down to Brandon's, to that armor thing.
Yeah, when we got dressed up and sword fought. Yeah.
And I remember you and I were talking about it on the way down. I'm like, bro, which one do I do?
Yeah, we talked about that because honestly, this is an artistic decision.
Yeah.
But this is the last experience people are going to have with this thing. And do you want to leave them? What do you want to leave them with? What do you want to leave them on?
And I think either, because I had kind of and I mentioned this in kind of the author's note at the end of the book. I had a more bittersweet, kind of saddish, ending, and then I had a more happier ending. And you and I were talking about it, and I told you both endings, and I think after that, between that and oddly enough, it was more environmental for me. I was just going through a garbage time, day job,
Yeah,
all that stuff.
Honestly, I think you putting a happier ending was better
that was
for you.
That was like mental health for me, dude.
For you, that
no
was
joke.
better. Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell you guys, there's a thing when you're writing, and I know a lot of the writers listen to this understand, where you write a really, really sad scene, it will mess with you.
Yeah.
Okay, so like I said, I killed a lot of people. There were a couple days doing this, like this final book where I write the scene, that death scene, and I still had several hours of good available work time, but I just would kill somebody and I'd sit there and I'd be like, it's like I'm done for the day. Like I'm done. I'm actually emotional, and I'm gonna stop now.
Yeah.
You know, and I think if you're invested, and if you're genuinely as an artist invested in your work, you're gonna have that happen.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the kicker: if you can make yourself laugh with your own jokes, they're gonna be funny. And if you can make yourself cry with your own emotional bits, they're gonna be sad.
I went out to lunch the other day with one of our listeners, one of our folks in the dojo, and his wife, and one of the things that we were talking about, because his wife, maybe she's his girlfriend, anyway, they were what she was saying is that, like, she's really hard on herself, and she feels like, you know, when she's looking at her own writing, like, it all sucks. And I get that. Like, I think at a certain point, especially when you've read your own book 9 million times just to get it right, you're kind of sick of it to a certain degree.
You've read it 16 times.
But I also think that if you're invested in it, and what I told her is that, you know, as time goes on, you're going to get over a little bit of that. But there's going to be moments where it doesn't matter how bad you think you are. There's going to be moments where you're going to look down at something you just wrote and go, all right, that was good.
I still got it.
I got it. and there are
Nailed
times, there are times when that happens. I mean, you know, I'll write a line, or, you know, we're going to do an episode on discovery writing here soon. And there's stuff that happens.
That's my current project.
Yeah. It's funny how when things organically kind of fit themselves perfectly into place, and you're like, I'm a genius.
Those are the great moments as a writer.
Yeah.
When you hit those, it's like, yeah.
Or, you know, both you and I share this absolute love and passion for noir and detective stories.
I've written a bunch of it and edited 3 anthologies of it.
Yeah, I mean, you just had a story come out.
So
Five Peaks Ripper, is that what it's called?
Yeah, out this month, 5 Points Ripper on Audible. Ripper. It's the third Lost Planet homicide story.
And
so that is out now.
It's about 50% longer than the previous two.
Yeah, free to Audible.com Plus members.
Yeah. So I remember when I was writing my first Werewolf Cop story for the third anthology that you edited. There were a couple times in there where I wrote a line and I stopped and kind of stared at it, and I'm like, that's a perfect noir line.
Yeah, that's a good feeling.
Okay, then.
Yeah.
And then I get to another part where, you know, because it's me, and I get to a part where it's very horror centric, and I write it and I look at it and I went, yep, that was right.
One of my favorite things as an editor is when I'll be editing somebody's stuff and I'll come across a bit like that, I'll just put a comment off to the side and be like, nice.
Yeah.
Or like, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, just some sort of, because just to know it is recognized.
It hits,
the quality,
right?
The quality was recognized.
Yeah, man. And I think when you're wrapping up a trilogy or series or however many books it is, you know, there's going to be moments like that. I mean, there dang well better be moments like that when you're wrapping it up where you go, yeah, I think I'm doing it right here. Yeah, this is it. This is good.
That's what you're looking for.
And if you recognize it, even through all of the, you know, self-doubt and imposter syndrome and boredom, because this is the 18th time you've read this chapter, trying to figure it out.
I've been sitting in a chair for the last 6 months,
yeah.
You know, looking at this.
You know, if some of that shines through, I think that's really good. I think it's a good sign. What was the thing that got you the most jazzed while you were writing the end?
Oh, man. Okay, so the whole last half of the last book is a fight scene. It is the final battle. It is the final battle between good and evil. It is what has been prophesized since book 1. And I tell you, it was a lot of work. But getting done with it, talking about being jazzed. It's like when you finish that, you're like, oh yeah, oh my gosh, this is it, this is it, and to be able to look at it objectively, like take a step back, look at it objectively, like, does this check all those boxes? Is this going to make the readers happy? Does this answer their questions? Is this that big satisfying conclusion? Does everything make sense? Yes, 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 yes. Boom. The feeling of actually completing a big series is awesome.
Yeah.
Especially for me, it's been 10 years of my life. I mean, I wrote 20 other books in there, but 10 years of my life I've been working on this. And to have reveals that I've known since book 1 that I could put in here, and lines in killing bad guys in certain ways with things that I have planned and have been teasing how this is going to go down for like 2-3 books in some cases. It's very, very, very satisfying.
Yeah. For me, it was because it's, this series has been alive, I guess, for a long time for me through so many various iterations, so many different publishers, et cetera, et cetera. Getting there to the end and the whole time, as a discovery writer, you often don't know what the ending is. I did for this from the start, from the first couple chapters of writing book 1 back in ye olden days.
Yep.
I knew what I wanted the end to be. And when I got there, I'm like, okay, I'm finally here at this end that I've been thinking about for frickin' ever. Is it working? And
it's a little intimidating.
It is, dude.
Yeah.
And, but I think it works, and, again, I was just shooting the bull with my dad the other day, and he's like, yeah, he's like, I've gone back, after finishing book 3, and I'm just like re-listening to it. Cause he only does audio. He's like, I'm re-listening to book 1 and 2 right now. He's like, I just finished book 1. I'm in the, partway through book 2. And he's like, there were a lot of little things in book 1 that now that I knew the end of book 3 made a lot, like the just kind of little things that jumped out. And I'm like, I know, it's almost like I planned it, right?
Yeah. There's 2 ways this goes. And it's, there's like where you planned it that way. Then there's the reverse of that, where you didn't plan it that way, but you had a really good opportunity and you remembered something from before, and then you fake it. And you're like, oh yeah, I totally planned it that way.
It's always both.
It is.
Right? Like there's some, like you're talking about, like there are things that you're like, I know exactly what I want to do right there.
Yep.
I just got to get there.
Yeah, there's been things that I've been waiting for 10 years to write. Then there's other things where I get to the last book and I'm like, oh, you know what?
If I do this,
I can harken back to this thing that one dude said in book 3, and then I hurry and get book 3 and look up that scene.
Yep.
And it's like, oh yeah.
I think that perhaps this is some good advice.
Totally do that.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I love doing that.
I think this is perhaps some good advice. Because earlier we were talking about the dangers of, being aware of, hey man, like don't be very wary about introducing a lot of new elements and new ideas and stuff like that. You don't got space. One of the ways to avoid doing that is to pull more from the previous books and reference them and say, hey, look, here are some cool ways that I'm pulling it full circle.
Yeah, those previous events don't exist in a vacuum. They're still out there for you to draw upon. And if you've come across an accidental opportunity like that, by all means, yeah, run with it. That's gold.
Oh yeah.
And then the reader thinks you're brilliant.
Yeah. I came across a few of those and I'm like, hey,
yeah,
I'm brilliant today.
Yeah. Remember when so-and-so said this in book 2? Yeah, that totally works right here. What a great idea. Yeah. And then they remembered when so-and-so said that in book 2 and it gives you a great solution.
Yep.
It's huge. And then the readers are like, wow, that was so cool that you thought of that.
Well, and as the author, it's pretty satisfying when those things line up.
Yeah.
For you.
I'm tempted. I don't know there's an actual term for this phenomena, but I think remember on titles, gobbets and reverse gobbets.
Yeah.
So guys, when you're titling a book, a gobbet is like when the name of the book is a thing in the book.
Yeah.
And a reverse gobbet is when you come up with a really good title for the book and then you stick that into the book to be a name.
Right.
And can you tell if the title of the book was a gobbet or a reverse gobbet? No, you can't really. But
Generally, no.
only the author knows. Though this one is called Heart of the Mountain, which actually is a thing that's been in the book since the very beginning. It was a very important thing. Yeah. And it was actually Jason Cordova that gave me that idea for a title. Because when it was Graveyard of Demons, I had to break it in two. And then Cordova's like, dude.
Well, Cordova's actually pretty good at coming up with titles.
He's sharp.
He like prides himself on it.
He's good at titles. So Cordova's like, hey man, you should call it Heart of the Mountain. I'm like, that is actually perfect.
Yes, I should.
Yeah, that is actually, that makes perfect 100% sense in context. So yeah, that's what I did. Yeah, so hat tip to Jason there.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, guys, I think where we'll end with this is that.
Well, until the next time we wrap up another series.
Yeah, until we do it a different way and then we have to talk about it again. Wrapping up a series is equal parts, I guess, entertaining in a way. Really freaking stressful.
Oh yeah.
But rewarding. And I think that the biggest thing I can say, because we've all read series, or if you're more of a visual person, we've watched shows where the ending has been lackluster, and I think a lot of times there's a fatigue there, or they didn't know what to do, and so I think that the more you care about this series, the series that you're trying to wrap up, the more you care about it, the more rewarding it's going to be, and the higher the chance of it being a hit is going to be. Because, like we always say, the more excited you are, that excitement's going to translate out. And if you're just wrapping up a story in a paragraph just because you got to end it, I'll never forget reading The Historian. It's a book called The Historian. It's about Dracula as a real life person or something like that.
I remember that. I remember when that was like a big thing.
Yeah. And, they have this epic conclusion, and I'm being facetious. This epic confrontation with Dracula at the end, and it's over in a paragraph. It's like, there he is. They conclude it. They moved on. The book's like 700 pages or something stupid. And that's how they wrap it up. And I remember feeling so cheated because there's so many promises I felt that were being made.
Yeah, like you turn the page, you're like, well, where's
the rest? Yeah. Or Sphere.
Oh, the ending of Sphere. I mean, I like Michael Crichton, but the ending of Sphere was terrible.
Where they sit down, they're like, you know what? It's a good idea. Let's make a wish that it never happened.
So none of this ever happened. It was all meaningless.
The end.
Poof. He was like, I remember reading that like, huh.
Yeah.
Because actually the first half of that book is really good. It's
very tense.
Really tense, really interesting. And then it's just, we're going to just make it go away.
And I think what happens is they forget, authors often can forget that they need to be as excited in the end as they are in the beginning.
Yeah.
And so if there's any little bit of advice I can give, it's that. It's don't phone it in, be excited and put the work in. If that means the book is, like in my case, 15, 20,000 words longer than I anticipated it going to be, or you split the book into two.
It's an extra
do the
book.
Work.
It's an extra book longer.
Yeah. But I mean, think back on it, man. Like if I'd have said, no, this book can only be 70,000, 75,000 words, I would have had to have cut a lot of very pertinent stuff.
Yeah.
If you had said, oh no, I'm at book 5, I have to finish it in book 5, it can't be more than 150 or 175 words. Like think how much that story would have missed out on.
It's like a TV show that gets canceled before it's supposed to.
And so they do the 2-episode wrap up.
Yeah, they do the emergency 2-episode wrap up, and then they get renewed and then come back from it, and nothing feels right.
That's right. Yeah.
Babylon 5, The Expanse. Every time that happens, it's like they get kind of shafted.
Yeah.
You know?
So, but yeah, so hopefully you guys found this entertaining and found it interesting. There's a lot of learning that went into writing that last book, dude.
Yeah, it's true.
It was rough.
Well, it's one nice thing is by the time you wrap up, you're more experienced than when you started.
That's true. All right, everybody. If you have any questions, feel free to email them to us. We'll answer them on a Q&A later. But for now, this is the Writer Dojo. We'll see you on the next one.
Writer Dojo is Steve Diamond and Larry Correia. Produced by Jack Wilder and Bear and Hare Studios. Theme song, Word Mercenaries by Craig Nivo. New episodes come out every Wednesday wherever you stream your content. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can help support us by going to anchor.fm/WriterDojo, by leaving a 5-star rating and review, and by helping to spread the word. To advertise on the Writer Dojo, email ads@writerdojo.com. All questions and comments can be emailed to questions@writerdojo.com.
The dogs are too valuable to throw them at people.